The hell is that? What's up, guys? Welcome to my review of the Super Mario Brothers movie, and this is actually one that I've been looking forward to for a while. The trailers look like a lot of fun. Of course, video game movies do not have the best track record at all, but in the same year that we got The Last of Us, my optimism is starting to take over for some of these video game adaptations, and Mario Brothers is one that, if nothing else, was going to be a giant shot of nostalgia for me. Now, growing up, I gotta admit, I was much more of a Sonic guy than I was a Mario guy. Please do not send hate mail or put bullets in my mailbox, but yeah, always was more of a Sega Genesis guy, but I had plenty of experience with all the different generations of Mario, going all the way back to the original NES, all the way up to modern day with some things like Super Mario Odyssey or every iteration of Mario Kart, where there are like 75 of those at this point. Mario, Sonic, all those old school games, pure unadulterated nostalgia for me. And so when I saw the trailer for this movie, saw how bright and colorful the world that they were bringing to life was, saw how the animation style really fit Mario, and even the little bits that we got in the trailer of nostalgia and pointing towards certain generations of these games, I got excited because there's very few family movies, especially animated movies, that I can sit down with my kids, and while they're hopefully enjoying themselves, I'm able to sit there and enjoy myself. The word that I use more often than not when describing an animated film that I take my kids to is tolerable. So, was this good? Was this bad? Or was it just tolerable? Starting off with the positives, I thought this movie was so much fun. There was such a good amount of escapism just enduring this world of Mario Brothers and the Nintendo world in general, with all the different things that they're bringing to life in this Illumination film, with a lot of the humor, a lot of the classic Mario elements, going all the way back to Jumpman and Donkey Kong, going all the way through to some of the more modern games and some of the more modern additions to things like Mario Kart, like the little gliders or the squirrel suit. They managed to squeeze more than 40 years of nostalgia into this film, and 40 years of variations of references, and all of them, every single one that I picked up on, brought a smile to my face. I mean, just the enjoyable nature of these characters and this world and the way that they interact with each other, and the goofy elements to a classic Mario Brothers type storyline was fun enough. But when you have little extra elements like a guy in the background of a pizzeria playing Jumpman on an old arcade cabinet, or Luigi's ringtone, which I'm not going to spoil, was just something that it really did make me feel like a kid again, and there's not too many movies that can make me feel that way. And the inherent nature of the story that we're on here is essentially just a trip through all the different versions of Mario's world. You get hints of Luigi's Mansion in there, you get Mario Kart, you get the Donkey Kong world, you get to see the light and the dark sides of this entire world, and just going through all these different elements and all these different video games that a lot of us my age grew up playing, all the different variations of, that was just a really cool, fun trip to go on. While my kids, for the most part, understood some of the references, understood the characters, knew the basic storyline and the basic fun that they were taking us on, all those extra elements allowed me as the adult to really enjoy it on a different level. And one of the bigger elements of all of that is Brian Taylor's score. There is a ton of different classic notes from all the different Mario games here, and they're very new, they're mixed in a very different way, but they all sneak their way in there. And all throughout the movie, whenever it was Brian Taylor's score, I think it fit the sequence so well. Again, just continued to bring smiles to my face. It was almost like Easter eggs within the movie score, and all of that, all the nostalgia, all of that is just basically the big highlight of the positive side of my experience. On a technical level, I thought the animation was awesome here. I really liked the art design that they decided to go for. Now, I'm not like a huge critic when it comes to animation style. I don't watch a ton of animated films, but there are ones that I do prefer the style that they go for more than others. You know, one of the big ones that everybody loved was Across the Spider-Verse, and I'm still one of the few people that didn't necessarily love that animation style. I thought that the way that they they decided to go here. While it is definitely kind of classic Illumination, they're not really reinventing their wheel, I think it fit the Mario Brothers world very well, and it brought that whole world to life in just a really enjoyable way. Moving on to the mixed, and this is where most of my experience of the movie when I'm putting on my critic hat actually lies. First one is the voice casting. Now, this has been something that's been a topic of controversy ever since they announced this thing. Chris Pratt, who seems to just be a tabloid punching bag at this point, he was all over the place as far as Twitter and Facebook, especially when the trailer actually dropped, of people just bashing this guy and saying he's going to ruin the movie and trashing the studio for casting him. And I gotta admit, I think he did pretty decent here. You know, it's not the best voice acting I've ever heard in my life. I think that he's done better, like in the Lego movie, but he does have a lot of classic Mario elements here. You still hear Chris Pratt coming through. It's not a complete escapism, but specifically with him, I feel like the level of controversy that he got was just not quite earned at all with what the performance ended up being. It works much better in the context of the movie than the couple of notes that they gave us in the trailer, which I'll admit, did not sell him very well. A couple of highlights in the cast. I thought that Charlie Day as Luigi was damn near perfect. Just his kind of neurotic, high-pitched voice fit that character and what I view Luigi as so well. Jack Black was the standout to me. Now, you're probably going to have some mixed feelings on that because Jack Black becomes Bowser about as much as Bowser becomes Jack Black, and when you see the movie, you'll understand what I'm talking about, but for me, he is the only one that really felt like he used his vocal style and some of his trademarks to create a version of the character that he was able to bring to life. And at the end of the day, that's what voice acting is supposed to be. Pretty much all the other voice actors were fine. Anya Taylor-Joy as Princess Peach, she was fine. Keegan-Michael Key as Toad, he was fine. The voice modulation did most of his work. The one performance in the movie that didn't work for me at all was Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong, and it's because it's literally just Seth Rogen talking like Seth Rogen while being the face of Donkey Kong. There's no actual voice acting being on display here. There's no becoming Donkey Kong. There's no alterations to his voice or his personality or anything whatsoever. It's just Seth Rogen talking into a microphone, and I don't think it fit the character. I don't think it fit Donkey Kong whatsoever, and the whole time he was on screen, despite Donkey Kong being arguably my favorite character of this entire collection of people, it just didn't work for me. I didn't feel like that was a good match. Now, with that being said, I have seen a lot of articles over the past couple of days specifically going after Seth Rogen because he did an interview essentially saying, I don't do voices. I just do the Seth Rogen voice and the Seth Rogen laugh. And if you hire me to be the voice of your character, that is what you're going to get. And people have been all over him about that. And I gotta be honest with you, I think all of your anger and frustration is merited, but you need to direct that at the studio, because the studio and the people in charge of casting these voice actors are the ones that deserve all of that criticism, because we have reached an era, and it is not new, to where actual voice actors do not get work in these animated films hardly ever anymore. It's just big A-list stars that you can put their names on the poster, whether they're a talented voice actor or not. And there are some people in Hollywood that can do a very good job of being an on-screen actor and being a voice actor behind a microphone. And then there's people like Seth Rogen that do very well on screen, in my opinion. And then you're just going to get their voice in a microphone and their face and their name to promote this film. And that is what they chose. They chose to go with that. They knew when they hired Seth Rogen and everybody else here that that was what they were going to have as the voice of their characters, for better or worse. So if you do not appreciate that approach, and I totally understand, the studio are the people that deserve that backlash, not the actors that were hired to do a job and did the job that they were hired to do. Yes! One more note on the voice acting itself. I actually like the fact that Mario didn't have that signature kind of Mario voice to him. It's me, Mario. Oh, mamma mia. Like, that's all classic Mario, but you have to keep in mind, we don't hear those lines very often throughout Mario games. Those are not story-based games. There's not a ton of cutscenes and dialogue. Those are just little iconic lines that happen once in a while throughout all the history of Mario games. And as much as we love it, That for 90 minutes or more probably would have got grating. And so I actually appreciated the fact that they took kind of more of a real world human voice as far as the Mario approach here. There's kind of an in-movie joke about why he doesn't sound that way that I thought was very smartly done. And so that is my stance on that. The other mixed element, which I would lean mixed negative, is the story of the movie. And there's not really much of one. Essentially, you have Mario and Luigi that get sucked into this pipe and they get spit out into this crazy world. Mario gets dumped into the Mushroom and Magic Kingdom, and Luigi gets dumped into Bowser's territory. And so the entirety of the movie is essentially Mario trying to team up with these characters that he meets to go and rescue his brother. And that's really all we get. There's not a whole lot of character motivations or character depth beyond that very simple premise. There's not a whole lot of motivation given to Bowser as to why he is heading in the direction of Princess Peach. And the motivations they do give him fit the video game and kind of acknowledge a weird element of the video game in a pretty clever, funny way, in my opinion. But there's not a whole lot to grab a hold of here if you're somebody that goes for story. This is something that just sets you into this world and really hopes that you either enjoy the Mario-isms or you enjoy the nostalgia, because that is the vast majority of the experience that they're going to give you. And while I'm definitely a story guy, I'm definitely somebody that goes for character arcs and all that first, once in a while, I can escape into a movie like this, and even though it's bare bones, I can enjoy it because I have all that nostalgia. And when you think back to all the Mario games, there was never really much of a story there in the first place. It was always about the world and the characters and the little quirks of these games. And so, for one movie, I think that worked. And I think it's good enough to springboard off of this and hopefully develop something better in the future. Just like the first Sonic the Hedgehog movie, I would say the same exact thing. But just for this one movie. They can only get away with that once. Moving on to the negatives, I have two things. First one is that I felt like the movie was a bit rushed. Once you actually get into the Magic Kingdom and Bowser Kingdom and the actual Mario world that we all came to explore, it felt like they really just jumped through all the plot points, jumped through all the character interactions and setting up the team and all of that, where there were certainly a few sequences, at least in this, that I felt like we could have let breathe a little bit more. We could have actually paused a bit and had a little bit more character stuff going on rather than just going through all of the checkboxes that we need to have in a Super Mario Brothers movie. And so while I appreciate the fact that I got to walk into a movie and walk out within an hour and a half, and that's not a very common experience nowadays, I could have spent at least another 10 to 20 minutes in this world and been fine. But the biggest negative to me, which from what I hear is actually a pretty common element to Illumination films, and I have not seen many of them, so I'm going to take their word on that and defer to their expertise. The actual soundtrack, not the score, not Brian Taylor's music, because that is awesome and one of the best elements of the movie. The actual collection of real-world songs that they used in this movie. I think maybe one of them worked. All of the rest of them felt out of place and almost was jarring. I don't think they fit the scene that they were in very well. And I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that whoever decided on the soundtrack of this film must have just went into Spotify and picked a playlist titled Biggest Radio Hits That We're Sick of Hearing. It was to the point where I am not exaggerating whatsoever. During a Mario Kart assembly sequence, a very overplayed song came on, and within 2 notes, audibly, you could hear all of the moms and dads in the theater just go, ugh. And aside from the applause at the end as the credits rolled, that was the only audible audience reaction throughout the movie was, oh, this song again. But overall, guys, I had a really good time with this movie. Is it going to have staying power with me? Is it something I'm going to continuously revisit? Probably not, but I just don't really revisit animated films all that often, so that's just a me thing. I had a really good time. I enjoyed all the nostalgia. I enjoyed most of the experience that they gave me, and I will absolutely be in line day one for a Super Mario Bros. 2, and all 3 of my kids had a really good time as well. Even my 6-year-old, that is an extremely hard audience member to keep her quiet and entertained in a movie theater. she was engaged almost the entire time. So if you have a family, if you have kids, go check it out this weekend. I guarantee you, you'll have a good time. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed this, please click over here for all of my 2023 new release reviews so far. And I'm also going to put a link to a video game video on my gaming channel where I talk about some recent video game releases as well. Please like and share and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss everything in the future. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.